All she wanted to do was protect humanity from the potential threat of the mutants. But little did she know, her fear would give rise to an even greater danger, a threat that could endanger all of humankind. Join me today as I go over the spooky tale of the Night of the Mechazoids. This story takes place right after the events of Mutant Mayhem, where the Turtles showed signs of heroism in front of the citizens of New York by defeating Superfly. Becoming heroes allowed mutants to take their place in civilization, and the Turtles were finally free to accomplish their dream of attending high school with April. But not everyone looked at these mutants as heroes. Someone's rancor was about to spark a nightmare. I'm talking about Josefina Bishop. But to understand the depth of her ill will towards the Turtles, we must go back in time. Bishop was an engineer who dedicated her life to robotics, initially driven by the need to create artificial legs for her sister, Elena, who was born without them. Bishop herself had a robotic arm, though it was never revealed how she came to need one. Helping her sister inspired Bishop to do more good for the world, leading her to develop advanced robot assistants. However, during her college years, a tragic incident occurred. Her AI went berserk. Whatever happened during that event was severe enough for the FBI to classify her as a potential threat. It's unclear what happened to Elena from this moment on, but it was implied that she was no longer part of Bishop's life. She created the Mechazoid, a bipedal, self-repairing AI for limitless applications. But the project was costly, and she needed an investor. That's when she approached Roderick Underwood Sr. He agreed to invest double the amount she asked for on one condition. She had to take his son, Rod Jr., under her wing to help him find a purpose in life. In honor of Elena, Bishop created Mechazoid Alpha. This robot, with its soft, friendly female voice, symbolized the culmination of her work, a refined AI that she hoped would make a positive impact on the world. Unfortunately, this coincided with the attack of Super Duper Fly. Alpha sacrificed itself to save Bishop from falling debris. When Bishop regained consciousness, the first thing she saw was Alpha's shattered remains and the Turtles leaping around in their battle against the kaiju. It's up to your interpretation what she felt inside, but to me, the robot was filling the void left by her sister's absence. This thing she created to help humanity, and perhaps to make peace with whatever happened to Elena, saved her life from the mutants. Bishop then decided these robots were the answer to the new threat to humankind: mutants. But as with all stories, there are two sides. While Bishop was consumed with her new purpose, Rod Jr., after witnessing the mutants in action, began to see robots as outdated. Rod finally found purpose in mutants. Bishop altered her designs, transforming the Mechazoids into silent hunting machines, specifically engineered to detect and eliminate mutants. She believed that these mutant-detecting robots were the key to restoring the natural order. What she didn't realize was that she was about to unleash a predator that could spiral out of control. But let's put Bishop on hold for a moment and head back to the sewer lair, where the Turtles were getting ready for a costume party. April was eager for them to arrive soon, as she didn't want to show up alone. Otherwise, she'd rather be out investigating the new gang in town. While Leo was using Donnie's phone, their only mobile device still intact, he noticed several alerts about a mutant sighting. Donnie, Mikey, and Raph were all about heading straight to the party, but Leo, ever the responsible leader, insisted that they check out the mutant activity first. After all, it could just be Bebop and Rocksteady causing their usual chaos, or a new menace. They couldn't take any chances. The Turtles arrived at a shipping container storage yard, where they encountered a hologram of a strange mutant creature. This was all a trap orchestrated by Bishop. After revealing her intent to destroy all mutants, Bishop unleashed 4 Mechazoids to eliminate the Turtles. The Turtles quickly fell into their usual team dynamics, relying on Leo to devise a plan. Leo assessed the situation and ordered his brothers to lure the Mechazoids under a hanging container, while Mikey was tasked with distracting Bishop. As Mikey engaged Bishop and Rod in conversation, something unexpected happened. Mechazoid 03 mistakenly identified Rod as a mutant and began chasing both of them. Bishop knew something was off, and after seeing the Turtles' plan to smash the Mechazoids, she discovered that all the containers around them were filled with fireworks. Leo's plan culminated with him cutting the container loose, triggering a massive explosion that forced each turtle to scatter in different directions, with the Mechazoids hot on their tails. Overwhelmed and believing the turtles were finally dead, Bishop returned to her factory. But to her surprise, she soon discovered they were still alive and still on the run. Separated from his brothers, Leo found himself pursued by 01. It didn't take long for Leo to realize how much harder it was to fight without his team by his side. After barely escaping with his life, he remembered that Donnie still had his phone, which April could track. That could be their only shot at regrouping. Mikey and Rod Underwood were speeding through the streets in a garbage truck, desperately trying to outmaneuver 03. The situation was dire, especially since the robot seemed intent on attacking Rod as well, despite him not being a mutant. After managing to temporarily ditch 03, Mikey insisted they keep moving. That's when Rod dropped the bombshell. He wanted to become a mutant, believing it would make him strong and fast like the Turtles. During this conversation, Mikey learned Rod's father was Bishop's boss, the one funding all the robotics. Mikey tried to convince Rod to call his dad and shut down the robots, but Rod had a different idea. He wanted Mikey to use his blood to mutate him. Mikey hesitated, uneasy with the unpredictable nature of the mutagen, but the promise of $1 million finally swayed him. Meanwhile, Raph was in bad shape, suffering from a broken rib by the river. Before he could gather his strength, he fainted and was taken by the purple dragons to their lair at the gently plucked chickens warehouse. 02 wasn't far behind. Feeling abandoned at the party, April wondered where the turtles had gone. Frustrated and assuming they had ditched her because of their newfound fame, she left her phone charging and tried to enjoy the night alone. Donnie, on the other hand, was in the heart of Times Square, frantically trying to contact April. But with no response and 04 hot on his tail, things weren't looking good. In the chaos, he lost his phone down a storm drain. Forced to retreat into the subway, Donnie discovered that Bishop had taken control of the entire subway network, using it against him. Mikey and Rod went to the zoo, hoping to use the animal hospital for Rod's mutation. Rod explained that he had heterochromia, one eye of a different color, which he believed made him unique. Unbeknownst to him, this already made him a mutant. But before they could do anything, they ran into trouble with security and ended up being chased by a bear. Taking advantage of the chaos, Mikey ended up injecting Rod with animal blood instead of his own mutagenic blood. Raph's situation grew more complicated when he met Hun, the muscle of the purple dragons and an unexpected animal lover. Soon after, Angel arrived on her motorbike, bringing more tension to the scene. The dragons were led by a mysterious figure named Kitsune, and Raph learned that someone named Bob was letting them use the warehouse as a base of operations until they found a proper place. As Donnie tried to outsmart 04 by hacking into Bishop's network, the robot followed him onto a subway train. Using a laptop he'd borrowed from the police, Donnie attempted to take control of the robot. But Bishop was onto him, and she prepared to crash the train remotely. Donnie had to think fast. Meanwhile, Leo found April, and the two of them reached her phone. But before they could catch a breath, 01 caught up with them, starting a high-stakes chase inside the building. Leo distracted the robot while April retrieved her phone and found the messages from Donnie. Back at the zoo, Rod was furious when he realized that Mikey hadn't used mutagen to transform him. During their heated argument, the ooze spilled into a garbage can, accidentally mutating a pigeon, just in time to help them fend off 03. Mikey quickly named the pigeon Pete. Raph discovered that Hun carried around his pet brick, Bricky, as a reminder that he is supposed to be the strongest member of his gang, despite his distractions as an animal liberator. Kitsune then arrived, pleased with the captured mutant, as she had international buyers interested in obtaining their own mutants. She ordered Hun to cut off one of Raph's fingers as a sample for pharmaceutical companies. As Leo battled the robot, he learned through a conversation with Bishop via 01 that she hadn't captured his brothers. This gave him hope. They were still alive, fighting their own battles somewhere out there. Despite not being the usual plan guy, Mikey devised a daring strategy. using the bear to fight off 03 and buy them time to escape. After saving Rod's life and inadvertently creating Pigeon Pete, Mikey took responsibility for both of them. He asked Rod to escape with Pete, while he stayed behind to confront the robot. Realizing he needed to buy time, Raph thought of what his brothers might do. Channeling Mikey's sense of humor, he started telling chicken crossing the road jokes, stalling the purple dragons just long enough for 02 to break in. Knowing the stakes, Donnie warned Bishop that humans had mutations too, and it wouldn't be long before the robots also turned against them. Desperate for a stronger signal, Donnie climbed to the roof of the train, closer to the antenna, and prepared to make his last stand. Drawing inspiration from Raph, he unleashed his inner beast mode, fighting off 04 long enough for his program to do its job. Leo and April finally took down 01, which returned to its headquarters, leaving a trail of oil behind. This gave them a crucial lead on Bishop's location. Mikey managed to defeat 03, but Rod's phone was destroyed in the process. With no way to contact Rod's father directly, they decided to head to her factory. However, 03 was still operational and followed them closely. Raph and Hun reluctantly teamed up to take down 02, with Angel swooping in at the last moment to finish the job. Afterwards, Raph discovered that the robot was manufactured by Bishop Robotics. Having saved Hun, Raph was allowed to escape, and he took Angel's bike as he left. Hun, true to his word, freed the chickens, though they didn't look both ways before crossing the road. Donnie successfully reset Bishop's network just in time, allowing the train to brake safely. He then captured 04 and reprogrammed it to serve as his backup. Realizing the turtles were closing in, Bishop decided she couldn't allow them to destroy her work again. She activated her final line of defense, her XS-1 armor. Leo, April, and Raph arrived at Bishop's factory and prepared for a showdown. As the turtles engaged Bishop in battle, April slipped away to infiltrate the control room, hoping to gain an advantage from the inside. Before long, Mikey and Donnie arrived with Rod and Pigeon Pete in tow. Now reunited, the turtles quickly improvised some armor using the scattered robot parts around them and launched a coordinated attack on Bishop. But just as they gained the upper hand, the three Mechazoids, 01, 02, and 03, joined the fray. Each now displayed distinct features and, having upgraded themselves, could now talk. As the battle raged, the Mechazoids, recognizing that all humans had the potential for mutation, concluded that humanity itself was a threat. Turning on Bishop, they moved to tear her apart. Realizing this, Leo made a split-second decision and leaped to save her. Rod quickly pulled Bishop to safety while the turtles fought back against the Mechazoids. At that crucial moment, former Mechazoid 04, Metalhead, joined the fight, evening the odds. However, the situation worsened when the Mechazoids, seeing how the mutants had corrupted one of their own, decided that anything alive had to be eliminated. They unleashed the remaining Mechazoids from the factory, escalating the threat. The turtles, Bishop, and their allies retreated to the control room, where they found a brief moment of respite. Finding some common ground, Bishop and the turtles agreed on a temporary truce to save humanity. Leo, Raph, Mikey, and Metalhead charged back into battle, focusing on protecting civilians, while Donnie and Bishop devised a plan to shut down the Mechazoids with an EMP bomb. They needed to detonate the bomb from a high point to maximize its effect. But the Mechazoids quickly caught wind of the plan and rushed back to the factory to stop them. Donnie and Bishop made their way to the roof, climbing up a radio antenna with the EMP bomb in hand. As they fought off the Mechazoids, the situation grew desperate. The robots knocked the bomb from their grasp, sending it plummeting to the ground. But just when all seemed lost, Pigeon Pete swooped in, grabbing the bomb and flying it high enough to detonate, leaving the city powerless, but safer. Unfortunately, Metalhead was destroyed, but the turtles promised to turn him on later. April reported the story. Rod told his dad he wanted to be a mutant, and Pigeon Pete found a new home with the mutanimals at the lair. Exhausted, the turtles skipped the party and returned home, where Splinter remained blissfully unaware of the epic adventure his sons had just survived. But what came of Josefina Bishop? She turned herself in, ready to face the consequences of her actions. However, the Earth Protection Force, better known as the EPF, shared her concerns about the mutant threat. In fact, they were admirers of her work. Instead of punishment, they offered her their resources and a position as an agent. With a villainous gleam in her eyes, Bishop accepted their offer, setting the stage for a future tale of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The voice cast for this series brought together an impressive lineup, including Mika Abbey as Donatello, Shimon Brown Jr. as Michelangelo, Nicholas Cantu as Leonardo, and Brady Boone as Raphael. Ayo Edebiri returned as April O'Neil, with Alana Ubach voicing the formidable Josefina Bishop. The cast also featured Pete Davidson as Rod, Christopher Mintz-Plasse as Pigeon Pete, Carlin James as Hun, Jamila Velasquez as Angel, and Max Middleman as Metalhead, among others. Perhaps to save costs, or because each turtle had their own episode this time around, the actors recorded their lines independently, marking a significant difference from how they worked on the film. One interesting detail involves Splinter. Initially, some sources announced James C. as the voice of Splinter, but in the final credits, Fred Tatasciore is credited for voicing him instead. Fred, a mainstay in many TMNT productions, provided the voice for a Vermin version of Splinter, a creative decision that appears to have been made in response to Jackie Chan's absence. In the show, Splinter only speaks in Vermin as part of his effort to strengthen his relationship with Scumbug, but this narrative choice also conveniently explains the casting change. Showrunners Christopher Yost and Alan Wan had to reimagine the character of Bishop. Traditionally, Bishop has been portrayed as an agent obsessed with aliens after being kidnapped by them. However, the showrunners decided to take a different approach, because the Mutant Mayhem universe is more grounded, lacking fantasy elements like aliens, outer space, and time travel. They crafted a more grounded storyline for Bishop, focusing on the real-world fear of mutants instead of extraterrestrial threats. Also, without mystical elements, this grounding in New York City helped the show stay focused on character-driven stories. Separating the Turtles was this story's main appeal. Suddenly, Raph had to tell jokes to survive, Mikey had to be the responsible one, Donnie had to go full beast mode, and Leo didn't have anyone to lead. The story sets the stage for those deep personality questions of who these characters are without their brothers. The Mechazoids were inspired by the real-world Boston Dynamics robots that are so often shown to be resilient to kicks. The episodes focusing on each turtle are also color-coded, with blue, orange, red, and purple hues, depending on the protagonist. The team was in constant talks with the movie team to make sure the two were aligned. The decision to animate the show in 2D was partly budgetary, but also aimed to capture that punk garage band feel, reminiscent of Tank Girl and Gorillaz. The music, composed by Matt Mahaffey, echoed this vibe, with a theme song that blends the energy of Scott Pilgrim with the edginess of Tank Girl. Notably, the intro sequence, written by Yost, changes with each tale, reflecting the story's unique tone. If the name Matt Mahaffey sounds familiar, it's because he also did the music for Rise of the TMNT. There are some interesting details and Easter eggs. For example, Leonardo is commonly known as Nardo by his high school peers. In another detail, when Donnie created an armor for himself, he looked like his Image Comics counterpart. In the same episode, Raphael looks a little bit like the Shredder, which could also be interpreted as a nod to that comic. In any case, what's next for this universe? Well, this October, the story continues in video game form, in Mutants Unleashed. Then, depending on the show's performance on Paramount+, a second season could come out next year. And finally, the sequel to Mutant Mayhem, introducing the Shredder, will come out in October 2026. While this tale is primarily told from Leonardo's point of view, there are enough scenes to suggest that this isn't just his version of events. For instance, Bishop's conversation with the EPF provides insights beyond Leo's perspective. The 4 central episodes, each focused on one turtle, also differ in how they explore flashbacks. Leo's flashback unfolds through comic book panels, Mikey's is sketched out in a notebook style, Raph's is presented with a more cinematic touch of cartoon animation, and Donnie's is depicted in an 8-bit video game style. These stylistic choices add unique flavors to each turtle story. In the second episode, when Rod is brainstorming names for his potential mutant self, he tosses out Mutagen Man as a possibility. This could be a bit of foreshadowing, or simply a misdirection. His personality would definitely suit that character, but perhaps it was also a good reason not to retell the same story. As a final note on the characters, I found this version of April to have the funniest deliveries in the show. She really stands out with her humor. Now, as a longtime Turtle fan, watching a new version of the Turtles is always a bit of a shock, even after experiencing several different universes. Tales of the TMNT's animation style was a bit shocking on my first watch, but I found it super enjoyable on my second viewing. My ranking of the episodes is 2, 3, 1, 5, 6, and 4, with Mikey's episode being the best. However, Donnie's episode isn't bad, it's just that by the time it came around, the solo episode format was starting to feel a bit repetitive. The show avoided this in the second half of the season, which I'll discuss in a future video. I think the central message of this tale is about how hate and fear can lead us to our own destruction. Bishop believed she was protecting humanity by creating mutant killer robots, but she ended up creating an AI that could very well destroy all life on the planet. If that's not a powerful argument for learning to live in harmony and respecting our differences, then I don't know what is. What are your thoughts on this story? And which one was your favorite episode of this tale? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. See you in the sewers.